Welcome to Joe's Astrology. Today is Saturday, May 18th, and the sun is approaching the sign of Gemini. There's a huge stellium in Taurus right now. So if you're new here, check out my videos I did all throughout Taurus season, but we're getting ready to move into Gemini, so I want to talk about Gemini energy. Not just the sun in Gemini or moon in Gemini, but Gemini energy in general. And let's just read some of the keywords here for Gemini. Communication, learning, writing, speaking, information, scattered, superficial. Let's start there. Anyone who has Gemini in their chart, let's say especially Gemini Sun or Gemini Moon, one thing I want to point out is there's a negative expression, a positive expression, and maybe you could say a neutral expression. And a lot of what I see with Gemini is they're very scattered. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like for example, someone with Gemini energy could enjoy two jobs rather than one. For example, in my chart, I have Gemini on the 6th house cusp, and I don't have any planets in Gemini, but I have that Gemini on the house of work cusp, and the ruler of that house is on my ascendant, Mercury. And even though if I think about it, I never felt like this was the case, but if I think about it and I go back over my history, I've always had two jobs at the same time. There's been periods where I've had one, they didn't last very long, but the vast majority of my life I've had two jobs. And there's always been, in my mind, I still felt like there was one main focus. There's always that second job that I would maybe I wasn't even doing it for money. I was just doing partially for money or partially for just enjoyment or for friends. So that's an example. And I also have a video on that on, I forget what it's called. Maybe I'll link it down in the description, where I talk about the signs on the houses. But Gemini can be scattered like that. I think that's not necessarily a negative expression. That's probably more neutral or positive, depending on the person. One thing with Gemini that I think is not okay, that's definitely negative, is the deceptive activity, duplicitousness, the idea of being two-faced, being two different, showing two different personalities, showing two different sides of the self, being flaky, and this is what, I've known some Geminis that I've seen, like, there's a vast spectrum of this. I've seen it really bad, and I've seen it, like, not. It's always hard to tell with Gemini. That's the thing. It's like, and a lot of times they're not going to admit to it, so it's hard to tell how much of a trickster they're being. I don't think they're even trying to do it on purpose. It's just, like I had a friend who had Mercury in Gemini, and I believe North Node in Gemini conjunct Mercury. And this guy is all over the place. Totally distracted, flaky. That's another thing, distracted. That's another big negative quality of Gemini. And in this case, I think this person when he was young, was diagnosed with ADHD. So that could be, which later on he no longer accepted that diagnosis and got off the Ritalin as an adult. But he still is all over the place, which I'm fine with that. I think that's fine. But this idea of being distracted, one thing he would do which I always, the benefit of the doubt, I say, because all that Gemini, you get on the phone with him, he's always quick to get off the phone. And I know part of that is because he's not interested in talking to me. But at the same time, it would happen so much that um, it would almost get it would I mean it would get annoying. But we could look at some of the other things. There might be some good reason that Gemini's like this stuff. It's not always. If we look at the deeper reasons why Gemini would be like this, we see another keyword is information. And why is that? Well, Gemini, for some reason, we could say people with Gemini energy may need to be scattered because they're searching for some kind of information that's elusive for them. They, you know, they want to go through. Maybe there's a reason that they have to go through lots of different information to get to the right information for them in a life. So there could be reason for them to go quickly through different pieces of information. They have to be scattered. They have to be flaky. Because if we look at the life in its totality, we don't really know where they're going. And that Gemini energy is very beneficial from that standpoint. If we think of like the sign next to Gemini, Taurus, where a person may be stubborn or fearful of looking at information, that's not going to help a person that's going somewhere regarding the need for information to get them there. Duality, I mentioned that idea of duality: superficial, scattered, lies, trickster, opinion. And even this idea of being a trickster, I really learned this when I talk a lot about this when I got into sales. I saw a lot. You see a lot of Gemini energy, and you see this natural Gemini Sagittarius axis where these people are excellent at what they do. They're great communicators, they're great sellers, they're great at being in one place, being in two places at the same time. It appears like they may be a trickster. Like you think of like the salesperson as being, being a liar, a trickster. Think of that phrase, a snake oil salesman. But these people need to be like that. And when you get into sales and you see how it works, in order to be successful, that Gemini energy is very helpful. And I can elaborate on what I mean by that. They may have to go through a lot of people to find the deal. So there's no time to think about people's feelings or consider what they're saying. The best ones, they just go real quick onto the next. And if you're like me, I'm not exactly wired like that. I have too much Cancer, just too much care in that sense, for good or bad. And that was a struggle for me to really see things that way. It still is. Even doing these videos, there's ways I could approach this that's more Gemini-like. That at this point I choose not to, because I just don't like it. Short-term memory, rationalization, siblings, twins. I really haven't done much with twin energy and looked into that, but that's something interesting. Instability, logic, teacher, short journeys. Gemini, again, this idea of short journeys. There could be a reason why this person needs to take short journeys. There could be something that they could learn, someone that they need to meet. This idea of traveling in and out of places, going different places very quickly. You think of like living in some of these big cities where people have to commute, or even just the commute in general. The idea of the third house in Gemini, having that, like I spoke to someone recently who had to drive 45 minutes to work or an hour to work. And I said, that's kind of long. And she said she enjoyed it because she's used to it. She's always been, since she was young, she's been used to being in the car on these little short journeys. And that's what I mean by this Gemini energy with travel. A person like that might think she's used to it and that she enjoys it. And in her life, it's helping her maintain a living. So it's not to say that Gemini energy is bad, or any of these energies are bad. They have their purposes when it's used in a neutral or positive manner. So I'm going to talk more about Gemini as the month goes on. We're just getting started here. In the next couple of days, the sun will move into Gemini. I hope you enjoyed this mini analysis of Gemini in astrology.